Well, they went 0-4 again this week. There goes my 3-point request. Hell, there goes my get at least one game to overtime request. The Sens have now lost 13 of their last 14 games. These are signs for me to usually lose my mind. But here's the truth. Last week was probably Ottawa's best week play-wise of the entire season. The results obviously weren't there, but the effort was. At the end of the day, this week taught us exactly what this team is. Just plain and simply not good enough to compete. And you know what? That's okay right now. They're a young team. They're going to have some problems, but the effort is at least starting to be there, and if it can stay there, the results will eventually come. Now let's get into it.
How are the young guys now? I finally did it! I scored again! Quit taking penalties! The Sens are gonna blow this game! Way to tie up the stick in front. Not. Well done. Just well done. You better believe we're gonna be having a penalty chat at the end of this one. What a time to be alive! What a long and brutal season that was. This team, man!
The Sens come out a little slow against the Habs. Matt Murray holds them in it early. The Sens get better as the game wears on, but Josh Anderson scores early in the third. The Sens power play lets them down, and they lose to the Canadiens 2-1. So what did I like from this contest? After having a really rough couple of weeks, Matt Murray was really solid in this game, and that's what I liked. Murray was terrific in the first period, turning aside 19 shots as the Sens were outshot 19-8, and really gave his team a chance to start to get their feet under them in the second period. Without Matt Murray early in this contest, the game could have got very out of control very quickly, but he was equal to the task, and that's what I liked. And that brings me to what I didn't like. Anytime you finish a hockey game 1 for 6 on the power play and lose the game 2-1, it's pretty easy to point to the power play as what you don't like from a game like that. The Sens finished with 1 goal on 6 opportunities, had just 8 shots on those 6 opportunities, and just genuinely did not generate enough offensively on the power play to make it worth their while. The Sens power play has looked pretty good at times this season, pretty awful at other times this season, and in this contest, they just weren't good enough. And that brings me to game number 2. The goaltending is excellent early on as neither team finds the back of the net in the first period. The Sens get a gift early in the second period as Adam Larsson scores on his own net on an Evgeny Dadonov chance. The Sens then never really pressure Mike Smith the rest of the way, and it allows the Oilers to rally and skate away with a 3-1 win. So that brings me to what I liked from this contest. The Sens did a real solid job keeping the Oilers' big guns in check, and that's what I liked. Draisaitl finished the contest with a goal and 1 assist, but his goal was just kind of a lucky bounce that found its way over to him, and his assist was his secondary assist on Tyler Ennis' game winner. I didn't think Draisaitl was overly dangerous in the contest, and I thought the Sens did a pretty good job of keeping him at bay. And as good a job as the Sens did on Draisaitl, they did an even better job on McDavid. McDavid finished with just 1 assist on a Josh Archibald empty net goal, and again, he only had 3 shots and wasn't extremely dangerous in the contest. Now, the Sens did get lucky in the first period as McDavid ran out of time after he totally undressed Derek Stepan, but it didn't damage them at all because the period was over. So overall, after watching those guys just kill the Sens in Edmonton a week earlier, they did a pretty good job on McDavid and Draisaitl, and that's what I liked. And that brings me to what I didn't like from this contest. I've brought this point up over and over and over again over the last few years of me doing these videos. None of the coaches seem to make any kind of adjustment to it and just continue to do it. And so what I didn't like from this contest, the Sens pull their goalie in the final 2 minutes, give up a goal with over a minute left, and completely kill any chance they have of coming back. The Sens have the puck in the Oilers' zone, and they're pressing hard for the equalizer. The Oilers get the puck out and don't even have to make an effort, just flip the puck down the ice at an empty net, and, well, how do you come back from 2 goals down with a minute 10 left? I would much rather walk away from a hockey game saying, well, we lost 2-1 and we tried in the end, but we couldn't do it, as opposed to going, well, we lost 3-1 because we gave an empty net goal up with over a minute left and couldn't really make any effort to come back after that. The Sens pulled their goalie, gave the game away, and that's what I didn't like. And unfortunately, they didn't learn their lesson, because that brings me to the very next game. The Sens jump out to an early 1-0 lead thanks to a Connor Brown goal 26 seconds in, but Marcus Högberg can't make a save. The Sens fall down 3-1, can't dig themselves out of it, and lose 3-2. So that brings me to what I liked from this game. I thought the way the Sens finished the last 2 periods of this contest were just terrific. Despite giving up 3 goals in the first 23 and a half or so minutes of the game, and just having no shot with goaltending the way it was, the Sens rallied from there. A large part of that was thanks to Matt Murray going in net, but the Sens said, you know what? Even though this game is going completely away from us, and even though we haven't gotten a save yet, we're going to keep working. They ended up out-shooting Edmonton 30-10 over the final 2 periods of that game, and really took it to them at times. Goaltending was obviously a big reason why the Sens lost this game, as they couldn't get a save, but their effort was far from a problem, particularly in the final 2 periods where they were terrific, and that's what I liked. And that brings me to what I didn't like. A worrying trend for me this season, and one that has been going on basically all season long, is it seems like Ottawa outshoots their opponent on a nearly nightly basis, and on a nearly nightly basis they lose. So what gives? The one thing I've picked up on the Sens so far this season is they've spent way too much time working from the outside along the boards and way too far away from the net. It was a big problem in this game, and that's what I didn't like. Mikko Koskinen came into that game struggling a little bit and was a little bit tired after playing 12 of his team's first 14 games. And what do the Sens not do? They don't put enough pressure on Koskinen. If you watch this game, or any of the other ones really, the Sens will get the puck and they'll fire it from the outside at the blue line or along the boards or from the side of the net. But there's not enough of going to the net, getting to the front of the net, forcing the puck there. And it's really hurting the Sens' offensive abilities, and really, it's hurting their ability to score goals in general. How do you win in the NHL? You score goals. How do you do a good job of keeping the other team from scoring goals? Keep them to the outside. The Sens are doing a good enough job of that themselves, and it's not resulting in any goals, and not resulting in any wins. And that's what I didn't like from this contest. And that brings me to the 4th and final game of the week. The Sens come out in this contest and are absolutely flying. They're all over the Jets early, but can't buy a goal in the first period. The second period rolls around, the Jets get a couple early bounces, cash in on those bounces, and before you know it, the Jets run away with a 5-1 win. So that brings me to what I liked from this contest. One of the things the Sens have struggled with many times this season is consistency. It usually seems like they play 1 or 2 really good periods, but never seem to put a full 60 minutes together. And while it wasn't a full 60 minutes in the same hockey game, after the way they played in the final 2 periods of Edmonton, they carried that over with an excellent first period again against the Jets, and that's what I liked. The Sens come out in that first period, and they are flying. The Jets can't seem to get the puck out of their own zone. The Sens are just moving it wherever they want. They outshoot the Jets 18-6 in the period, but credit Connor Hellebuck. He stood tall back there and allowed his team to get into it. Unfortunately, much like the last game and a bunch of other games this season, there was just too much outside play and not enough dangerous opportunities for the Sens in that first period. They weren't able to buy a goal. And then, like I said, consistency is a problem, and the Sens are never able to quite match their first period effort the rest of the way, and things got out of hand. And that brings me to what I didn't like. Things got out of hand because the Jets got some chances, and in the third, things got out of hand because, well, Matt Murray is hurt now. Oh boy. I know DJ Smith said it was precautionary that Matt Murray came out of the lineup, but the last 2 times a guy was precautionarily injured was Thomas Chabot, Eric Brandstrom. Both of them missed a week with their injuries. The Sens can't afford to have Matt Murray go down with injury right now. Marcus Högberg is the worst goaltender in the NHL as it currently stands, and beyond that, they have Joey Daccord, who has 1 game of NHL experience and gave up 5 goals to Buffalo. If you think things have been bad for the Sens so far, wait till you find out how bad they are with Matt Murray out of the lineup. Please tell me Matt Murray's not out long term. And speaking of Matt Murray, that brings us to this week's 3 stars of the week. And as always, We're going to start off with star number 3. The interesting thing about the Sens so far this season doing these 3 stars is, typically speaking, I have a difficult time deciding on the top 3 because most of the time you haven't been able to find 3 players that have actually played well over the course of the week. This case, a lot of players played pretty well, so it was harder for me to narrow down the guys that really kind of stood out more than the rest. And so these are the 3 guys that I was able to pick out this week. You may have had different guys altogether, they might have been in a different order, or maybe 2 or 3 or 1 of the guys are the same, but these are my 3 stars for this week, and star number 3 is Brady Tkachuk. I didn't think Tkachuk had a dominant week, and I would lay some of the outside play blame at his feet, but I thought Tkachuk was good enough this week to be star number 3. Despite the Sens losing all 4 contests this week, Tkachuk was an even player, which says a lot about a young guy who isn't exactly known for his defensive prowess. He also finished with 1 assist on the week and should have had another one on an unbelievable pass to Dadonov on the Adam Larsson goal. Again, I think Tkachuk could do to go to the net a little more and make things a little more difficult on the opposing goalie, but I thought he had a pretty solid week this week, and so for that, Brady Tkachuk is star number 3. And that brings me to star number 2. This guy has found himself on the most disappointing player list at one time this season, but this week, I thought he was pretty good. And so star number 2 is Evgeny Dadonov. Dadonov was brought into Ottawa and expected to be a big offseason acquisition, and he started the year very slowly. It seems like over the course of the last week or 2, he started to find his skating legs a little bit more, and this week I thought he was much better than he has been in the first 3 weeks of the season. I thought at times this week he and his line mates were dominant against opposing teams. He finished the week with 2 goals and really was pretty solid this week. And so for that reason, Evgeny Dadonov is star number 2. And that brings me to star number 1. Full disclosure, I first built my most disappointing player graphic last week, and because I had to first build it, I used a placeholder player in his place. So I figured I'd build the most disappointing player for last week with the guy I thought was most disappointing for last week. Then, Thursday night's game happens, and all of a sudden Matt Murray plays well, and that most disappointing player award that Matt Murray earned last week had to go because he was so good in that game. Fast forward a week, he goes from being pulled off the most disappointing player of the week award, gets put on the first star of the week award, and so for this week, the first star for the Ottawa Senators is Matt Murray. I thought Murray went through about a 2-week stretch where he was pretty awful. In fact, he wasn't really giving the Sens any better opportunity to win any game than Högberg was. That's saying something. But the Sens sat Matt Murray down in Edmonton, told him that he's only expected to stop the puck, he doesn't have to do anything else, tried to calm him down a bit, gave him a few days off, and that seemed to really turn the tide for him, because Matt Murray has been excellent ever since. The game against Winnipeg wasn't great, but there were some bad bounces that kind of went against him, so you can't blame him totally for that game, and the 3 games before that, he was just terrific. He gave them a chance to win against Montreal, gave them another chance to win against Edmonton, and then came in against Edmonton again, and was the only reason the Sens had a chance to win that contest. So after a terrific week in goal, Matt Murray is star number 1. And now to recap the 3 stars from this week, Brady Tkachuk is star number 3, Evgeny Dadonov is star number 2, and Matt Murray is star number 1. And that brings me to the most disappointing player of the week. Ironically enough, one of the players on the 3 stars has been seen on the most disappointing, and the guy that's most disappointing this week has been seen on the 3 stars. This guy was not totally awful this week, but by his lofty standards, he wasn't good either. And so this week's most disappointing player is Tim Stützle. After scoring goals in 3 straight games and having 3 points in the final game last week against Montreal, Stützle went scoreless this week. And although plus minus is not the be-all end-all stat, he was a -6 on the week. Again, it's not like Stützle was awful, but you expect a lot more out of a 3rd overall pick and a stud player than 0 points and a -6 rating. I thought Stützle showed some skill at times and had some opportunities, and some of those were a result of him just being too small and getting pushed off the puck by guys like Adam Larsson, but it still was a little bit flat for me this week, and so for that reason, Tim Stützle is this week's most disappointing player. And that brings me to the week ahead. The Sens play 4 more times this week, all on the road, as they visit the Winnipeg Jets at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. They're then in Toronto on Monday, Toronto again on Wednesday, and Toronto again on Thursday. So the Sens play the Jets, who have run their show all season, and then they get 3 straight on the road against the best team in the NHL. Might not be a very good week again. So how have things been going against the Jets so far this season? Well, like I just said, the Sens are 0-4, and they've been outscored 19-8. Overall, against the Jets, things haven't really gone much better either, as they've lost 6 straight and have been outscored by 18. Oh, and Connor Hellebuck's never lost a career game against the Sens, as he's 7-0. So there's that too. So they get through that contest, and then they get the best team in the NHL, which, for the most part, would be a concern, but at least the Sens seem to play the Leafs pretty tough for the most part. The Ottawa-Toronto games are always interesting, because the Sens are 1-1 against Toronto this season, despite Toronto being the best team in the NHL, and the Sens being the worst. If you go back to last season, the Sens have lost 4 of 5 against Toronto, but in that span, they've only been outscored by 4. So while expecting the Sens to beat the Leafs isn't exactly a realistic option, expecting them to keep the game very close and very tight is, because that's what they've done every time over the last 2 years. So, fingers crossed that it doesn't go awful. Last week I asked for 3 points out of the 4 games and I got 0. So this week I'm going to ask for 3 points again. I know that it's a little bit unrealistic given the fact that they're playing Winnipeg and Toronto, but I just have a feeling the Sens might steal one against the Leafs and might force one of the other games to go to overtime. So I'm asking for 3 points again. So that's it for this video. Hit like if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share it with anybody you know, and comment down below what you thought of my choices from this week. Oh, and let me know what your predictions are for the week ahead too. Will the Sens get any points? Will they get 8? Let me know down below, and we'll see you next Saturday after the Sens play the Jets and the Leafs 3 times, all on the road.